Zoom. Okay, we call her Bertha. And Bertha has announced it started. We're on, what's the date, the 4th?
Yeah, March 4th.
Today is March 4th, community dinner. That wave you see in the background there is an old friend's house. So we're getting the spider web even bigger now, community. My old friends are meeting my new friends and the web grows larger. The love spreads further. So yeah, I'm loving being here, Ian. We've built, the Freedom Friends, the whole thing, like, there's a lot of us, and it's nice to see some of the old crowd I grew up with meeting the newer people and, coming together. And because I was a punk rocker for a reason. I wanted to be like this when I was a teenager because I wanted to change the world, because it was bullshit back then, and like the decline of Western civilization, right? All that stuff, and we had our disregarded fanzine and we had our punk rock scene, and that was because we were angry about the bullshit going on. It was like the opposite of the 60s. It wasn't the decade of love. It was the decade of slam dancing, razor blades, stage diving, aggression, bands like Suicidal Tendencies and Aggression, and holy mackerel. It's definitely not the decade of love, but it was definitely a decade of rebellion for me. So here we stand, community dinner, and I just wanted to acknowledge the YouTube watchers that, I'm here because of you, people that are watching it, and thanks a lot, because this is how we make a better world. You know my motto by now, if you watch me long enough, is we're here to create the new world. We're not to complain about the old one. Because the de facto system is like a corpse to me now, and I just want to kick the corpse and move aside, because it's not going to be around much longer. There will be some collateral damage, of course, and there is, but mostly people are waking up, and that's what the talk tonight's a very brief one, but this is where some part of my practice is located. And so I had said in the newsletter, we're going to talk about spring recommendations in general, adaptation to the warmer weather from the colder weather. Just like you change the oil in your car from cold weather to warm weather, the blood quality will change from cold to warm, because it must, to circulate in different coldnesses. And then the other part was, what is natural law? Because that's what I'm really supposed to be promoting more than anything, is this natural law thing. And so why natural law? I think it's a good place to start. Is there are certain laws of the universe that some of us have paid attention to long enough to be able to write down from, whether it's the Islamic angle, the Greek angle, Native American angle, different European angles, Chinese medicine angle, Ayurvedic angle. Everyone's pointing at the same universal phenomena. I call them laws, but they're probably better words to market it. The natural, Georgia Sosawa, a macrobiotic teacher, called it the order of the universe. There's an order to the universe. And so it's fortunate for me that as a child, I just kept getting shut down by the system, because it only pushed my resolve further to see that the magic of the world does exist. And I'm going to learn those magical rules, like use the force, Luke, Luke Skywalker, manipulate people. And well, I've done that, you manipulate people through love, through connecting with them in a good way, like dreaming up a better judge, or dreaming up a better cop, or dreaming up a better vegetable, or even better going, thy will be done, which is complete surrender into the forces of the universe that are much greater than ourselves. So learning natural law means, you're aligning with the forces of the universe versus going against them. So, if you're going down the river in a boat, you don't want to go against the current, because then you're using a lot of excess energy. And that's how it is in life. We're on sort of a river, and we have our little boat that we can maintain a certain amount of free will with, but really the river of our life is taking us where it's going to take us for the most part. Why else would the Zen Buddhists say, you're not the doer? And then I add in, stop taking credit for what already happened inside you. That's what the ego does, goes, ooh, how did I do that? How did I make that happen? Let go. Well, you didn't, because that's not the ego's job. We just align with what already let go. And that's why Jesus said, you're already forgiven, for example. Because, as egos, we're stuck in this 3D soul theater to a certain degree. And so to sort of enlighten ourselves, we learn and align with the laws of the universe, and we pray to grace, really. I mean, the bottom line is it's grace, and we pray to grace. That's why they sing songs about amazing grace. And so my lover is grace, literally, because I would be nothing without grace. I would be asleep at the wheel and probably dangerous right now. But fortunately, we in the room here, and maybe those watching the recording or the live group, there's a certain level of awakeness. And we can define that in day-to-day life as, we're free to choose, or we're in the flow, and we're not operating from trigger and instinct. And we don't have regrets and doubts or circulating, compulsions of, like I would have if I did something that I knew was wrong, then it would just recirculate, sometimes for days. Regret, doubt, shame, especially shame, because that's the program that the men have been worked on, especially. They get the women all raged out and gaslighting, and they get the men into shame, and that's kind of been the program as far as I can see it for the last couple of generations. So here we are in spring, looking forward to the brightness of, like the brightest day is like May 1st, the day I was born. A lot of traditions, the day of the highest fertility. It opposes oppositely 6 months on the astrological calendar, the Day of the Dead. So by definition, the opposite of the Day of the Dead would be the Day of the Life. Get it? So, we look at that in, I don't know much about astrology, but Carl could add in here, like I know that I've been attracted to a lot of Scorpio women that were born in late October. Why? Because they're the polar opposite of the chart, right? Drawn to the opposite. And that's how it works, right, Carl? You're kind of some primal way drawn to your opposite. I love a comment. Okay. If you want. I'll put the, there you go.
So,
yeah, because you're the astrology guy. I'm just
all right. So we've just had a very intense Monday or Tuesday morning new moon. Actually, Wednesday morning new moon. This Wednesday, 9:34 in the morning, in Pisces with Jupiter and the Sun and the Moon, and Neptune not far away. And this is why there is so much contemporary confusion, challenge, anxiety. Neptune is all about lies and deceptions and addictions. And when Jupiter, which expands everything to the largest degree, comes together, you see wars being fought on deception and lies. You see populations not understanding natural law because being co-opted by something that has happened to this country even after the Civil War. We lost our soil and land jurisdiction, so we now are all ruled by maritime British law and Vatican law. But natural law is the basis of understanding the stars, understanding the cycles of time. And since you revealed your birthday being May 1st, your sun is early in Taurus, about 10 degrees, 11 degrees Taurus, and the planet Uranus just happens to sit on your sun.
Uranus sits under my sun.
The very planet discovered actually by Herschel at the ending of the War of Independence in 1781. That is sitting on your sun right now, sir, and you are being challenged to use technology as you're giving this webinar over the computerized internet, but also it's about the change bringer, the trickster, the coyote, the unexpected events. Don't get too complacent because it's going to change. And so it has, and so it will continue. And so this is natural law applied to an individual. But in the next couple of years, there will be some of the greatest changes on this planet. Everybody's feeling it, everybody's preparing. Why? From an astrological perspective, in 2023, 24, 25, by 2025, all the outer planets, starting with Pluto, starting next year, goes into Aquarius. Right now, the planet Pluto, that was demoted as a planet by the planetoid, but represents a collective unconscious of humanity. And that Pluto was at the position it is now on July the 4th, 1776. So we're having for the first time in our history a Pluto return. And that is a revolutionary impulse, which everybody feels. Under natural law, for us, that means the revolutionary is coming back to be Americans, not to be citizens as slaves or debt holders. You know, the only thing you are is a citizen of this great imaginary and promising country for the world. The hope of the collective humanity is that we all became slaves after the Civil War, and we lost our land and soil jurisdiction. And with the Revolutionary Act for me, and as for you, under Pluto returning to where Pluto was in 1776, is to take the Revolutionary Act and be a man and woman standing on the land. And that is what you're promoting, to bring natural law of health and nutrition. And that's what the last 2 years have shown us. You need to start taking care of your health day and night, because we are in a world conflict and that is intensifying. And so Pluto will go into Aquarius. Neptune, which is now at the end of Pisces, soon to be joined on April the 3rd by Jupiter. And then you really see it blow up, get bigger. And then, so we're in April now. And then later on in 2024, Neptune and Saturn will all go into Aries, and the planet Uranus will also leave Taurus and go into Gemini. So they create a great triangle in the sky, but they're all simultaneously going into a new sign. So it's going to be very unpredictable. But those economic forecasters who've looked at it, you know, who've predicted every last event based on artificial intelligence and various things, are saying that now in 2024 to 27, you should really not expect that it's going to be very stable. That's when the big shift comes. So between 24 and 27. So I would just leave it with, find out where your community is, find out where your food sources are, find out where your water is, where your spiritual beliefs are, where your health priorities are. And, you know, be careful about the money, because it's about to all be changed, or certainly being devalued at the current inflationary impulse. So, you know, it's really, if you haven't awoken to the reality of the great shift, it'll become apparent in the next few years. And it requires all of us to be really in our hearts. Yeah. If you're not going to be in our hearts, you're going to have a lot of anxiety, which is the illness of the heart. You know, always remember, fear is in the head, anxiety here, guilt is often, you know, through our actions in our hands, and shame is usually in the belly. And so the shame that you were talking about earlier would be an aspect of looking at your eating patterns, getting to know your microbiome. There's more bacteria in your bowels than there are cells in your body. So you might as well get to befriend them with the right foods that make them grow. And Americans have the least diversity of microbiomes of any other culture study. So it tells you why they're somewhat susceptible to need for detoxification via COVID or otherwise. So thanks for letting me share.
So that's our spring energy with Carl. Carl, I wanted to just mention also the doctors of old. The way I heard some of the old Chinese cultures was the doctor had to pay the patient if the patient got sick. And I thought, wow, that's the opposite of what we got, right? You get sick and you go pay this guy, but they don't teach you how to not get sick.
Or you pay the doctor to keep you well, and when you don't get well and you're not doing a good job, then you have to take care of them free. It's probably closer.
Right, take care of them for free, which is fair.
Yeah.
So to really make this sort of more solid is, you know, right now more than ever, there's enough people available, like the availability of teaching could go down, you know. That's why I'm keeping a lot of my books and things, because we don't know, like the unpredictability factor is, this guy Shahid I'm working with in Africa, he was telling me that out in the bush, which he's right next to, you don't learn anything except the oral tradition. You don't learn the herbs, you don't learn their ways of living unless you go talk to one of the old shamans, and he's not going to write it down for you. It's all talk and learning and exercises. And what's happened to that, right? Everything's on a screen. I mean, the men's groups, most of the Mankind Project that I'm out of now, they're meeting on a screen. And how can you smell your brother's sweat? See, feel something that you can't get on this device that is lost unless you're with the person. I mean, I feel like it's like 5 or 10%, and it can be very rich. I've trained for 3 or 4 years how to do these international men's groups and whatnot, but there's golden moments, but it's like you're still, I talked to a 7-year-old, little indigo kid, about 15 years ago, and he said when the internet was getting kind of rolling, he goes, oh, there's a whole class of us, we don't need the internet. And I knew he was telepathic, and I go, so tell me more. He goes, we have our own internet of ESP around the world. There's about 100 of us in every country of the world, he said. And he says they're like 7 to 10, they just 7 to 10.
7 to 10 years old.
I guess their parents hooked them up, or the parents were already indigo and they were a family or something. And this kid it was a bold claim. I mean, he looked like it to me, real deal.
Did he share what thoughts you were sharing with each other?
Well, for example, this is like 15 years ago. So this is 2007, and I was self-employed, working at a chiropractic office that was also an acupuncturist. And I think it was a bodywork case, I think, and we were just talking, I think, and trying to get the context of what was actually said. It was like the current events would come through, like current events around the world, gossip. Okay, what's going on in Russia? What's going on in Yugoslavia? What's going on in Japan? So they were able to communicate that, but because it was body work, there was just little bits and pieces. So I got enough now in my memory too. It'll be really interesting to dig up the record to try and find the soap notes on that. So back to the point here is learning to align, like we have certain powers, if you will, that really, there's been disclosures in various fictional books, and, Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files, was interviewed, and he was in Area 51, and his interview, he claims that a lot of the events in the X-Files really happened and are happening, but he has changed the names and the dates and fictionalized it. So it was his way of giving disclosure and getting away with it. I believe that sometimes in shamanism, a couple of my teachers would say, sometimes you have to trick someone into waking up. And there's the trickster, right? The fool, the court jester,
Seduce them onto the path.
Seduce them onto the path. There you go.
So that tricksters who seduce onto a path of spirit.
Well, that's what got me. Ajashanti calls it the great bait and switch. I got a taste of the powers when I was 25, and I thought, ooh, I can manipulate people, I can levitate, I can appear places all at once, and it was all driven by my ego. And then what's funny is the part of us that wants those powers is the part that gets cooked out in the process, Ideally, in my thousands of awakenings, unfortunately, the arrogant part of my ego kept surviving, and to this day. I mean, I definitely have a side that's like pretty outlandish, and I've had to learn to just be like a mother to it. Like, I'm gonna have to love you because you ain't going away, It's like you love you or have a dysfunctional part. And that's not going to work for the group. So natural law, then, kind of what Carl was ending with is, it's really learning to align with the forces more, understanding them, embodying them. That's what the word embodiment means. And we're talking about, we're all interested in transcendence, but part of the other half of being a spiritual being is embodiment. We all transcend to the light. And that's only half the equation. The other half is spirit's curiosity with matter. Nisargadatta Maharaj, he wrote the book called I Am That.
Say his name again?
Nisargadatta Maharaj, in Indian. He wrote a book called I Am That. he had this great poetic saying about the movement of love and the movement of transcendence. It's like the movement of transcendence is form's curiosity with spirit, and the movement of love is spirit's curiosity with matter. I'm paraphrasing. It was very poetic, but you can get that, right? Like, because in the absolute, it's kind of boring. Yeah, up here, astral realms, but it's not like, there's some serious consequences here. There's a lot of polarity in this three-dimensional realm, it's pretty dramatic. And I've been accused of being a drama queen at least 100 times in my life. Why? Because I like drama. It's laying here in front of the camera. Drama.
That was last year.
That's just, yeah. Everybody's saying,
Yeah, so look at some of the females I dated, for example. There's no drama there at all. Me and Carl had a long talk about that. At your birthday, I think. He's like, I got a good Carl talking to. But I gotta keep my energy contained here. And I haven't done with anybody, actually, Carl, since then. I haven't made love with anybody since then. So thank you. I had a few people that males and females was giving me like just hanging out with ladies, just hanging out, and it's nice. Like we hang out, and it's just nice to hang out with a woman, and we don't have to just be no label or name or sex.
Are you handing out a shingle for your viewers?
Actually, I've had numerous people accuse me of that. So thank you. No, I'm not hanging out shingle. I'm not dating. Not dating. Thanks, Carl. That's my snake, actually. That I had this girlfriend, she spotted. She goes, "You got this little sinister snake inside you," and I go, "Shh, you're not supposed to know that." And it's this. Carl just spotted it. And I said something on film a couple of weeks ago on community dinner that I don't remember saying, but somebody caught me and goes, "Do you really want to own what you just said?" I don't remember one of you guys. Somebody in the group caught me, and I was like, "Wow, that's so unconscious that how slippery my life is right now. Stuff just starts spilling out." But it's better to not be vigilant. That's part of natural laws, knowing when to be vigilant, when to really stay aware and present. And as Brene Brown said, when you numb one emotion, you numb all emotions. So vigilance can bring a numbness to it about it. And so I've seen that because I've been overly vigilant. And I had a teacher say, get over it 20 years ago. You've got to let go and let yourself fall asleep. Because I thought, if I fall asleep again, I'm going to be dangerous and hurt somebody. And like, yeah, you might. Get over it. Because you're going to fall asleep and you're going to wake up again. You're going to fall asleep again. You're going to wake up again. Maybe 100,000 times a day. Get over it. Stop talking about yourself in third person like, oh, Craig has sadness today. There is sadness present. I did that for 3 years with a girlfriend. And my friends were just wanting to barf. They're like, you guys are disgusting. Like, own it, man. It's just language, So we were trying to spiritual bypass is what the word is. It's trying to bypass these human feelings and emotions. We were transcendent of them. We had our enlightenment experiences. We were transcendent of it all, after all. That was like a 2 or 3 year phase I went through. The Jesus metaphor is 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. That's one of the metaphors I drew from. That's what it felt like, just the desert. No passion, no emotion, just gray all day. Someone I knew was on Zoloft once. And that's what I told her. I go, you're like a zombie. You're not even the person I know anymore. And kept after her for a while, and she got off of it, and then the person came back. That's the danger of some of these antidepressants. Their mind, right, Carl? They're numbing to the system.
Well, we all have a double, and the drugs feed the double, and then that double becomes more mechanistic and less human because it cannot feel the spirit.
and more present. If it's being fed, it's going to come out.
Yeah, and there are beings that like to live of your life energy.
Right.
Stand near any liquor store in the evening and watch what entities are looking for hosts.
It's why I don't go in bars and liquor stores anymore in the evening. I mean, in the Catalyst, in the Catalyst, I saw things that like black entities above people at the bar at the Catalyst, and I stopped going. Freaked me out, man.
There's a reason that liquor is called spirits.
Right. Right.
I hadn't
And
considered that.
you open wide up by getting drunk, right in.
Yeah.
Oof.
Remember, Ian? There was a saying at some of our parties when we were young: fight or fuck.
Oof, I
Remember that sa-
don't recall that, but.
Oh, in the Pleasure
I'm
Point
certain
crew,
it was Brennan.
yeah, in the Pleasure Point crew, that was an actual saying, fight or fuck. And planned date rape was the other. That's what I grew up with. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I can corroborate.
You remember?
I was there.
It's just, I mean, I could ruin a few people's lives if I wanted to, but they've changed, you know? You can't, who was someone once 30 years ago isn't who they are now. That's ridiculous to bring that forward. Especially if they've changed. If they haven't changed, then yeah, let's out them, but.
So since spring is coming and we're talking about spring, how did you spring into or come to know natural law?
Oh, great question, actually. Get crawl there on the sound effects not included. I like to say that because you know that's all the commercials. Sound effects not included. Batteries not included. I bought an Osmo Pocket camera and it didn't come with the memory card. It didn't come with the Wi-Fi Bluetooth piece. It was like, I'm like, what? You just buy this thing and then you got to buy $100 more components and they don't even tell you. It's like, oh my God. I'm glad I got it after all, but so that's an example of why I was drawn to natural law was I was talking to spirits at age 4 and got caught by my mom. It's a long story. I won't go into the details, but she said, Craig, who are you talking to? And I said, my invisible friends. You know, when you're 4 or 5, I was like, oh God, am I gonna get in trouble? And she's like, you can't do that, Craig. People think you're crazy. It's a subtle shaming. And so I didn't. And then the next awakening came at age 15 in US history, SoCal High. Dr. Wright, I think, freshman year, and the words manifest destiny, I read in the history book. And I'm like, you've all heard the story enough, you know, like I got mad. I'm like, what about the Indians? Where's their history? What do we do to them? Oh, nobody wanted to answer those questions. I got ostracized, bullied, picked on. That's when I became a punk rocker. It was after that. So I shaved my head because the Soldermans were the first ones at SoCal High.
So were you then alone and without relationship? And so, you know, not sure how to interact on what was your contract with those around you?
I felt totally, utterly alone and isolated. Literally, I felt, the only time I felt more alone was age 6 in the back of my mom's Capri station wagon. And this 20 angels came in and they were looking out through my eyes, and I call it the immensity. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. I got all these entities looking out through me. And I heard 2 of them talking in the background going, he doesn't get it. And this other one was like, no, he's going to get it. And then this third one was kind of an angry angel. And it's like, how is he ever going to survive in this world of idiots? Because I was 6.
You never told that.
And I felt more comfortable being alone listening to the angels because I couldn't talk to them anymore, but I could still, they'd come in, you know? And so I had no validation of this my entire childhood. And then 15, I met Chris Molnar. My brother and I, Chris Molnar, kind of bonded, and just in like complaining and rebelling, if nothing else, and learning to surf together. And then this manifest destiny thing came along, and I really felt like more than ever, like the rules of life are being hidden from me. The rules of life are being hidden from me by these. And then, you know, as I found out, it was like, the United States isn't what I thought it was.
Had you entered into contracts unwittingly? How were you bound?
I didn't feel bound. I just felt angry that the adults had not, because my mom had sheltered me up until that point. And then high school was my great awakening. I thought the world was an ideal, beautiful, idyllic place. It was crushed with one word: manifest destiny. Just crushed into oblivion. My life was over at that moment, actually. The person I was chapter 2 started, you know, because it's either like or move on, right? And the suicidal ideations hadn't started. They started 5 years later with Dr. Haddis at Cabrillo College, and he cured me for a while of that by changing my sugar. I was at potatoes and top ramen eater, lots of refined carbs. You know how the glycemic index of potatoes is. So he said, you know, lower your carbs a little bit, and your depression, your suicidalness will get better, and it did. He was the first person in my life that went like, wow, Sugar Blues. You guys, you got to read the book Sugar Blues by William Dufty. Man, that was a crazy book. Dufty was a Chicago reporter that a female movie star saw him at a bar in the late 50s, early 60s, and said, just walked right up to him and said, look, you got the sugar blues. And he did. And he's like, what the fuck? How do you know? And she goes, oh, the look in your eyes and the way you're sitting. So he wrote a book, researched sugar all the way back to the 1500s and how it used to be used and treated like a poison. Refined sugar is closer to a hydrocarbon than it is an actual nutrient, because it's just made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And that's what petroleum products are made out of. Think about carbohydrate, reverse it. Hydrated carbon, hydrocarbon. That's why refined sugar triggers an immune reaction. Like I have a new 75-year-old client, we got his labs in, and his white blood cell count 6.5. And I'm like, and he eats wheat and bread every day. I said, when you stop eating wheat, that'll drop down to 5.0, 5.5. His cholesterol's great, 187, but they had him on from a minor heart attack. Carl, you'll love this. Dominican put him on, they got 4 stents in his heart and 6 medications. And of course, I didn't tell him to. It was my opinion that he should maybe let go of a few of them based on the available evidence. And he not only dropped 3 of them, he dropped 5 of them in the last 2.5 weeks. And I said, how you doing? He's like, he's just beaming. He's just beaming. Because I told him, I go, I'm audacious. I go, you're off the poison now. Don't you feel better? He's like, yeah, thank you. He's just like, thank you. I didn't realize it was poison. And then so natural law to me is like telling the truth. So I told him the story about my friend Gerald Rolise, who wrote The Pharmaceutical Myth. And Gerald graduated UC Berkeley, magna cum laude, top of his class medical school. And the pharmaceutical industry seduced him in with big money. And he said he felt like Darth Vader for 4 or 5 years. Just sell them what they wanted, tell them what they want to hear. And he was making 6 figures, good money. And then he said his heart was just aching. So he just quit, cold quit. And then he turned to standard process and used my rep for standard process, because he found out about Royal Lee and how Royal Lee devoted his life by bashing the medical system, telling the truth from 1930 to 1960s when he died. The guy never made a dime and the company's still around. That's what I have in the office back there. And so Gerald's making 6 figures now and doing what's right. And he wrote a book about his experience as a pharmaceutical rep called The Pharmaceutical Myth. And it wasn't a complaint. The first half of the book is what he did and what he saw. And the second half of the book is how you get off drugs. So he offered the solution within the book, The Pharmaceutical Myth. It's on Amazon. Anybody that wants to get off medications, I would highly recommend this book. If you want to teach your doctor something, the doctors already know. They all have the drug reps coming in. They're just brainwashed.
Really taken up with the payoff. Hard to.
I mean, are you sort of indoctrinated in medical school, Carl? Aren't you sort of indoctrinated, like you're superior, you're a superior person as a doctor?
No, I mean, you have to look at drugs and differentiate between short-term use for an acute situation where it can be very life-saving.
Right.
Versus chronic drugs that you think you're going to be on. And that chronicity is what you want to work against by learning to transform it. And eventually you should be able to get off them if you do things by natural law.
But he asked about whether in med school they were teaching you to feel superior.
Like indoctrination in medical school, and in the Canadian one at least, because the American ones, it's pretty well known, they're indoctrinated to be arrogant and superior.
And most professions have some degree. It happens in the military.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
In corporate culture.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But I mean, if you go against a system, you have to invite people to come into a better system. And that's what you're basically offering. And the more you embrace that your system is health-giving and well and taking self-responsibility, you're slowly inviting the other people to let the air out of the balloon, and that's the way pharmaceuticals will come less. Unless, of course, we can create enough pandemics so that everybody needs more vaccinations, but that's not our path. So our path is to say, okay, have a strong immunity no matter what comes, and there's more coming, I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
They're working on it.
So that's part of the natural law too, is to understand, like, the immune system has all kinds of functions. Most people don't even really realize, but one of the lesser known functions of the immune system is to patrol our bloodstream for lyzed DNA. And that's what autoimmunity is you've got thyroid cell blueprints floating around the blood. You don't want thyroid cells being made in your uterus, do you? I mean, that's what endometriosis is. You're making uterine cells in the endometrium. That's not real fun for a woman. And so one of the immune system's jobs is to go around and they're like patrol cars. Oh, let's go pick that garbage up and, get it out of here. Because we don't want those instructions landing in this, with this contractor. You don't want a big soap opera hall blueprint being given to a contractor that does tiny residential work, right? Like, not a good match. And so in the body's more intelligent than most people give it credit for it. First of all, Carl and I know that individual cells, it's a fractal universe. So individual cells have a certain intelligence, just like we're a cell in Gaia, just like Gaia is a cell in something we don't even comprehend, and it fractals up and it fractals down. And we're in this part where through the medicine wheel and through doing sweat lodges, when they call the 7 directions in, the center of it to me is the golden chooser in the middle in the heart. Like, I get to choose. I'm the captain of the bug ship. I'm the captain of the bugs that are shitting in my body. Microbial toxins are part of our detoxification mechanism. Microbial toxins and microbial medicine. Remember the Trinity of probiotics, Carl, back in the 90s? Natasha Trenev and her work? She was one of the first ones to get the special acidophilus strains. And I was studying this in the early 90s when the hygiene hypothesis came out about 1995. And the relationship between overly sterilized people and autoimmunity. That came out in 95, believe it or not. So I was onto this stuff early. And where's I going with that? Oh yeah, Trinity. So they did this study with the yogurt culture, and they took milk and they measured the protein levels, all the B vitamins and the minerals, and then they cultured it through a yogurt culture. There was more protein, immunoglobulins, all kinds of immune factors, more B vitamins, vitamin K from the yogurt culture that was not present in the original milk. That's the bacterial poop, excrement. To put it non-gloriously,
Right.
But that's what it is. And so we're the captain of the bug ship, I call it. Hi, Ian, captain of the bug ship, Ian, and captain of the bug ship, Craig. And then there's this thing called fecal transplants. And people change you can put my poop in you and it'll change your physiology.
In your.
Animal-wise.
But for only a while, and then you establish it, because they tried that. They thought, well, we'll give fecal transplants from thin people and to obese people, and we'll make a killing.
Oh, it didn't work
But
long
it
term?
didn't work, because after a while,
You
that
revert.
culture reverts.
You revert. All right.
Because you didn't change
By
your
habit.
spirit, you didn't
That's
change your energy, you didn't change your emotions, you didn't change your discipline.
If you do.
If, yeah,
Probably most people wouldn't, but.
so it's still work. Incarnation is work, but it can be a lot of fun.
I mean, because dogs eat other dogs' poop.
Yeah.
So do they do it if they want the protein, the nitrogen? Is that what do you think they're doing there?
Oh, I have no idea.
I've heard
Like, why would you eat another being's poop?
Because it's a lot of what's in food is undigested, not completely digested, and if they're hungry, they know they can get something out of it.
That makes sense.
And they have a very different stomach than we do. We do not have that ability.
Not recommend.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
Not recommending this.
Going back to natural law. So the spring thing, we just had pizza for dinner, for example. And so generally, let's go to a more extreme climate, like maybe Canada. So in Canada, how's the weather up there right now? It's probably nice, early spring in Canada, right?
I talked to somebody in Canada today, the rain had washed up the snow in Vancouver. And that much.
So sludge and, and then here we are in the Bay Area and it's like, well, it feels like, today it rained 1/10 of an inch or
Yeah.
whatever. We won't go into all that because you know, it's just a depressing topic about what's happening with no zero rain in the rainiest 2 months of the year, which has never happened in my lifetime. I'm 56 and I've never seen zero rain in January and February ever in my lifetime. But I saw lots of tic-tac-toe skies every time a low pressure approached the coast, every time moisture approached the coast. I saw the relative humidity go up every time a low pressure field approached the coast, which shouldn't happen. I see a perpetual clockwise movement of air over the Bay Area, which is the way high pressure is. I see triangles and squares and satanic and Freemason symbols in the sky every day, most days now. Shall I go on? I feel satanic energies when I look at the sky a lot of days. And so I keep my mouth shut mostly because Bernie and Gene are really good. They're like, I don't want to hear your complaints. If you don't have a solution, I don't want to hear it. So that's Gene's motto. And I counter with, but if you stick your head in the sand, your ass is still getting burnt. You know, it's my, right, Joanna? So to me, my way has always been, I've got to take in this darkness and I have to find a way to find love in it. I can't ignore stuff. It's just not my way. And it's part of me will just chew on it and chew on it and chew on it. And, anxiety, talking about anxiety, So part of spring is this developing energy cosmologically on the planet. You can think of spring as the manifesting of Earth's dream for the year, the beginning of the manifestation of Earth's dreams. That's water turning solid. It's water turning, that's the 5 element thing. It's the water is always associated with the dream in most traditions. And then it becomes more solid. And then they call it wood energy in Chinese medicine. And one of my TCM teachers called it plasma energy. I think that's a rather loose correlation. I would call it energy that's expanding in all directions right now. Look at the seed. The roots are growing down and the tops are growing up. So it's rapidly expanding energy from water. And so inside of ourselves, the negative emotion associated with the liver, which is the element that's associated with the wood element, is anger. And so Ted Kupchak in my first Chinese medical book, The Web That Has No Weaver, gave me the most, I was really struggling with anger. And he said, all anger is stuck creative energy. Get over it. And I was like, wow, what a revelation. It's just stuck creative energy. Well, that makes me feel a lot better about it, Because the anger would bring shame afterwards. Oh, I'm angry again. This shows you what a freaking idiot I am.
Yes.
Right. But righteous anger is good. Like Braveheart anger is really good. Right. So we have to distinguish between righteous anger, which brings about change, versus rageful anger, which is destructive. Right. So, Braveheart, that was a real true story, wasn't it? That guy. Yeah. Yeah, so true story. Like that guy's down, he's a legend. He left a legacy. Oh, in the natural law class, that was a new word that came to me was, I keep having this thought, like, I want to leave a legacy here. I want to leave a legacy here. So what does legacy mean? I just looked it up, but I don't remember.
Well, it sounds like a continuing life that a life-giving force that continues.
Something you contributed.
Something you give that remains.
Like your kids are your legacy, right? This house could be your legacy, and the love you've given is a legacy, right? Because it's enduring.
Endures beyond our own.
Yes.
Yeah. So like
it's paid forward.
Piggy's was a legacy in a way. Piggy's market was a legacy in a way.
That's a warm feeling that never fades.
I always smile when I think about that place. I always smile when I think about that place. The tree of life is a legacy, right? All the people that have worked in there and tree of health, excuse me.
Yeah, right into what used to be little piggies.
Right.
Yeah, it's a legacy place.
Did you ever notice that little one that looks like a hobbit house?
I don't know.
Giant redwood stone.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, back in the early 80s or late 70s, I've been interested in what was over there, right?
I think legacy is what you take with you to create your next incarnation by acknowledging what you have done, but not necessarily a legacy that's outwardly visible that might counteract the ego. Say, the question I always had as a child was, well, if I'm going to grow up and have a child, why was I needed? The next step could have been my child without me being intervening. And I guess that was a question about who am I, why am I here,
Mhm.
how do I really get to know who I am? And in that process, you have to really embrace the lineage that you came through, because that bloodline wants to keep holding on to you. And in the future, it will not be that human beings will co-create through their bloodline. In fact, it actually creates negative beings. So now you see empires of autocrats and family structures that for the ruling family or corporations all interlock. Those are all bloodlines, and they create evil in the world. You have your children, release them into their soul development. And so for me, my legacy would be, what can I take forward into my next incarnation, knowing that eventually we won't have bodies?
Mhm.
But that's for 1,000 years in the future. I think Steiner talked a lot about what will happen in the future. So, but legacy is something that will encourage inner work. And if
Right.
that comes out as outer work and acknowledgement, so be it. But that's not its purpose.
So there's a Latin root to that word that keeps coming in. The word that keeps coming in is legere, or Legar, Leger. Legere, like legacy is probably based on an older word in Latin or Old English, I imagine. So that's what I'm going to find out. That's why it's going to be the natural law classes. It appears like, yeah, like, you know, there's an action there of the soul. Maybe the legacy is what it's maybe, I don't even like the word acquire, what it's aligned with maybe, or harmonized with in this incarnation to take into the, and we're talking, the language is so hard to use of these subtleties, you know, so I don't know what words to even use. But
embrace that soul you will always have.
Yeah.
And you have souls that you are just with your doubles.
I love that word doppelganger.
Yes,
Or doppelgangers.
Lucifer double, Aramani double. Many interesting doubles that make us good.
I had done, I'm going to stick to the theme here. So natural law is also, you know, there's ways of teaching sometimes that aren't necessarily what's approved or acceptable. I really liked Carlos Castaneda, and then I got this book on tape by a guy that wrote a 3-hour book on tape biography, and basically proved beyond more of a reasonable doubt that Castaneda wasn't telling the truth in what he was teaching, and that there's really interesting things that went on in this guy's life, that these people that really watched him very closely, you know, from the late 60s to the 90s when he died. And so this guy that had been studying him a long time, after he died, he said, you know, you can say truthful things within untrue things. And so that's why Castaneda's teachings resonate with me so much, is because there's so much truth in them, in the individual teachings. The totality of what it was probably, he was probably a high level trickster, this guy. He had a lot of women. He never had sex with them. He would seduce them to a point and then hold them at bay. Like he had like 7 or 8 women at once. He was had much stamina. And he was down in Southern California. And he was very good looking, you know, and so the earlier photos of him. So what I'm bringing up here is that sometimes we have to mine the nuggets out of, like, we're in this sort of contaminated world, right? A lot of the world is backwards. And that's why there's so many people that have bought into the spell. And that's the other part of natural laws. I'm going to bring in the old definitions of enchantment and charm and spell, because that's what people are under, is an enchantment. It's a spell, it's a charm. It's been running for millennia. And I knew I was awake when I was a kid. My first memory is doing this out of the womb, going, this feeling of just sheer and utter astonishment at how limited I was.
Really, you remember right out of the womb?
Pretty close, like laying in the crib, moving my fingers, going, it was pre-verbal, so I don't know. But there was this moment of, God, I have these, what are these things? And I was moving my fingers, and I remember feeling so limited compared to where I was prior to this. It's like, oh, I was everything. And now I'm, what the fuck? What am I now? What did I sign up for? It was that kind of astonishment, like, oh God, I didn't sign up for this. But that's the beauty of the theater, is you don't know what you're signing up for because it's free will. It's like, ooh, it's like a constantly unfolding reality TV. That's our life.
You went through the doorway and you forgot where you came from.
But like, we all do the same thing.
So
It's the same thing for all of
the
us.
older we get, the stronger that.
We forget on purpose so we can have the theater. The book Dune's about this. Frank Herbert wrote a book called Dune, and the whole Dune series, the main character, Muad'Dib, Paul Atreides, he knew the future. So he got bored. And he did a radical event and made himself blind so he wouldn't know the future anymore. That's the lesson. You don't want to control the future because life gets boring then. If you already know what's going to happen, like, where's the fun? Where's the drama?
Must be especially fun for you these days.
I've been waiting for this my whole life. Well, being up, talking like this, I mean, I didn't feel good earlier in the day. And it was a hard week, Carl. So all this stuff you were saying about earlier in the week, oh man, Tuesday and Wednesday were horrendous.
Yeah.
Just horrendous for me. So you saying that was like, oh, I feel so validated now. It wasn't just me, it was a lot of us going through this.
No, it's the planets were all within 1/3 of the sky. And they're half the time they were above us, all of them together, and the other half below us.
Oh my God.
And no planets in the sky at night. So it's been a very intense awakening. It's an opportunity to really be conscious of what is really taking place at whatever level you understand.
Yeah, it doesn't
Question
happen.
reality, like we used to say in the 60s. Question authority.
Subvert the dominant paradigm. That was on my mom's fridge.
Ah,
We
Nice.
call it the icebox, but
yeah,
subvert the dominant paradigm was on the icebox.
wow.
Yeah.
Where's she now?
She passed in 2001.
Wow,
Yeah,
no.
she went up.
Before 9/11.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can you imagine? Wow. Yeah.
That was more like a personal 9/11.
Yeah, and it was only months before. Now that that's really interesting. It was only a few months before. For me, it was very significant because my youngest daughter was born just weeks before 9/11. Yeah.
Wow.
And my mom passed a month prior to her birth.
Wow. Maybe your mom came in and reincarnated.
Yeah. I gave Sheila her name as a real name.
Probably not like. Like symbolically, there's an energetic connection.
Certainly could have at least crossed paths in an interesting way.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Don't you think? Yeah.
I don't know the audience, if you're watching this recording, you probably may not hear that. If you watch the video this long, I'm really impressed, personally. Yeah, I don't know if it's this long. But the last thing I wanted to bring in before the end here, just a couple of practical tips is, so since spring energy is rapidly expanding energy, if you're going to choose a vegetable, you'd like to get a young vegetable this time of year that's rapidly growing, like sprouts, or a young radish versus an old radish, a young carrot versus an old carrot, a young parsley versus an old parsley, because this is the season of young. So and then in the summer when the energy is big, like in June, then you choose a big collard green versus a small collard green, a big kale versus a small kale, because everything's big, right? It's full of light and heat, and you choose the big greens in. That's the old macrobiotic stuff. And so right now you eat your watercresses and your chickweed and your miner's lettuces and your young nettles and your young thistles. Yes, you can eat young thistle, very good for you, but pick them when they're young because, oh boy.
Not easy on your tongue.
Not easy on your picking hands, you gotta wear gloves. And the nettles too, wear your gloves. I'll pick them with my bare hands now because I'm just so used to it. But I mean, that's one of the mysteries of nature is the sting in nettles is formic acid. A lot of it is. And it's the same thing ants use to make their trail.
And break down products of decay. That's how ants clean the forest. That
Oh.
They decay the wood through the formic acid.
Oh,
That's why we use the homeopathic.
oh, right. See how fascinating things in nature? Isn't that cool?
That is fantastic.
Him and I do well together because we have complementary
I've been
knowledge.
watching a fallen redwood for many, many months. I walk the dog 4 times a week on that path, and it's remarkable how fast. And I've wondered, how is that possible? There are many other pieces which aren't having experiencing that effect. Why is it? I think maybe
Could the answer is.
could be the answer there. Possibly, yeah, other creatures are doing the work.
Yeah, mushrooms too.
And don't lignins have nitrogen in them? In tree fiber?
I'm not a specialist on lignans. We just know we can't digest them, but other things can.
Right,
But I
right.
forget what the sort
A couple of things about this time of year is generally there's a sodium potassium ratio, and generally you go higher sodium foods in the winter, higher potassium foods in the warmer climates. So if you're heading into like some warmer weather and your body's really used to colder weather, then you want to cut back on your sodium and have a little more raw and a little more potassium rich foods. Generally, you think of the potassium rich foods as fruits and vegetables and sea vegetables and some herbs. And you think of your sodium rich foods as your grains, beans, nuts, seeds, meat, and dairy. Generally, anything else to say about sodium potassium ratio, Carl?
yeah, that's also very acidifying, the latter ones that are high in sodium, whereas the other ones
Yeah,
are very alkalized.
right. So that's why in the, like our ancestors, I read about, our Irish ancestors, getting really bad diseases in the winter because they have to salt the meat and everything's acidic, and yet there's too much salt. And what does too much salt cause? Contraction, beef jerky. You don't want your flesh like beef jerky, do you? But you have too much salt without potassium or vegetables, just stiffen right up. See, the thing about salt is very paradoxical. A little bit of salt causes you to loosen up, but too much salt causes contraction. So it's very dose dependent. A little bit of potassium is helpful for someone like me, but if I go too much potassium-rich foods, I start sneezing, going to an allergy attack. So metabolically, I don't know, like there's a metabolic typing guy, like Guy Schenker, I think, or one of those guys. He was saying that for some people, specifically protein types, they can take potassium and make acid out of it via some transmutation process. And I was like, what? So
Complex Guy Schenker, I studied this. Also from Ruthie.
yeah, the Nutrispec system.
He was really a genius at this time medically in terms of understanding cancer, metabolic things, but kind of died with them. Guy Schenker sort of felt like he was his disciple.
Really?
And he has this really complex thing. But
Nutrispec.
Yeah, Nutrispec. I try to learn it all once it gets too complex.
I have the binder and I bring it out and study it every now and then. It is like that fat. And Michael McAvoy let me photocopy it. And it's been a 10-year study, and there's a little piece on Ravici in there in the gamma radiation studies, on the rats.
Yeah, he did a lot of things.
Man, he had some good
there's
work.
Some people, there's very few people who have carried on that work.
It's fascinating work. Let's see. Then, sea vegetables are also indicated this time of year. Generally less animal protein. This is like Lent, this is the season of Lent. And so it's letting go of rich foods, a little bit of fasting. I watched Carl, you got to check this guy out, the snake diet. He has this drink called the snake juice. And I was just working on marketing for Shahid. And I said, for example, watch this guy, Shahid. He's paradoxical because his intro video on YouTube, he has 170,000 subscribers. And his intro video starts out within the first one sentence. He says, "Hey, fatty, why don't you lose some fucking weight?" That's the first thing out of his mouth. Big, obnoxious weightlifter, meathead guy. He's got his whiteboard behind him. And he's like, but his specialty is fasting, and he gets great results. That's why he has a high. And some people like the sergeant, right? And but the point is that he has people doing, he says, his thing is that when you eat too frequently, you end up with inflammation. And so you want to extend out your eating periods if you want to lose weight. So we have people fasting for 24, 36, 48 hours and dry fasting. No showers even. Like no drinking, no water, no water even on the skin. And you talk about autophagy, the cell renewal, and I guess, have you seen that, Carl, by doing dry fasting?
The theory about some of that is that it lowers the deuterium-rich water, which is aging, and by dry fasting, you decrease the deuterium in your body, which shortens your life. And as opposed to wet fasting, where you're still drinking water, or unless you get it from the northern glaciers or something, has a lot of deuterium in it. It's in our body, so that's another whole thing. That's what I could see why dry fasting might be good. Normally, if you don't drink water and you're 99% of all the molecules in your body are water, you should always be drinking.
That was my first thought. When I heard it.
Everybody has that, but dry
Yeah.
fasting for that. And there is a whole thing now of deuterium depleted water. You drink that for 45 days, you really get your mitochondria working again.
Huh.
Yeah,
So they're able to get it out somehow.
yeah, and they're just building a new factory in Southern California to make this water available for us, because it's the Siberians, they figured out, why did the Siberians live so long? It's like 40% more of them live over 100 than other places. And they figured out the water they drink from the glaciers is deuterium depleted. And when you measure it in their body, there's much less deuterium. And that's like heavy water, heavy water that has a slight radioactive type of quality.
Sounds like deuterium.
Wow, I've never considered that for a second.
Tom Conway, what's our?
Cowan?
Cowan.
Tom Cowan.
Tom Cowan wrote it in his last book.
Oh, okay, I gotta get that book now,
Yeah.
okay.
But my understanding of dry fasting is it's never more than 36 hours. And the idea is that you starve out the unhealthy cells. And
Sure.
they die, and then they can't regenerate, because your body doesn't regenerate unhealthy cells from nothing. Your body generates healthy cells from nothing. So once you've gone through enough of a die-off, then you can come back to water and other things, and you'll produce healthy new cells, is the theory that.
He had a couple of it was an 8-minute intro video, and he went through some of this, basically saying, so it lines up. He definitely is credible, but he's just obnoxious. He drops an F-bomb every sentence. Every sentence. You would hate him. But I kind of grew up with guys like this, so I just sort of giggle and go, oh yeah, he's just so obnoxious and funny, in some ways, if you just take him for the grain of salt, So this deuterium thing is really fascinating to me, the idea of dry fasting. And like Monica said, these aren't things that you really want to, if you're coming out of McDonald's land or can take KFC land, these aren't the things you really want to try. Please don't. And I'm disclaiming this because of my first 1-day fast was a nightmare at age 31. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, I could smell barbecue chicken 25 blocks away, it felt like, and it was torture. Plus, Carl, I did Korean ginseng for my evening tea on my first day. I was a 31-year-old man, and I couldn't even sleep till like 1 in the morning.
How many walls you ran?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was like I thought, oh, this sounds good. I'll get some nutrition and I called my teacher, Michael Tier, after that. He's like, Craig, you're 31 years old. It's the last thing you need is Korean ginseng. He's like, you need like.
Your prostate that bad?
So, fasting is hard enough, and so that's why if you're going to try something like a fast, then that's why my cleansing system set up like you start out with like, here, take these, limit your foods down to this. We don't like to have what you can't have in my cleanses. This is the chart, 1 page. Here's what you can have. And not in a negative, right? So you can have all these 1-page of foods. And then if you want to limit that, then you can go down to the weekly chart, which is a further restriction for each type of cleanse. And then there's daily food charts where you can wean it down to like, after I did about 10 or 11 days, maybe now I'll try a level 3 challenge, which is fasting. Or I can say before you do a food fast, try a talking fast for a day. Now that's a good one. Or try a lie in bed all day fast and not get up. That's a level 3 challenge. What's another one?
Talking fast.
There's spring recommends. So natural law is honoring the seasons. And so like in my life, then spring, the last 25 years has been sort of a fractal. Every year is like, okay, I'm heading into spring. So when I started this 25, 30 years ago, I knew May and June were a nightmare because I had seasonal hay fever. And I would sneeze sometimes 25 times and then have to take a nap. You just be like, achoo, achoo, achoo. And then, oh, here's coming again, achoo, achoo, achoo. And so I had this teacher in Chinese medicine 20, 25 years ago said, if you have a problem time that you know is coming, and then start preparing at least 3 months ahead of time. So I started preparing around Christmas for my seasonal hay fever over the last 25 years. And then about 10, 15 years ago, it just started getting a lot better really fast. And then I did comfrey every day for 4 years, and that cured it. So there was definitely a leaky gut component to my hay fever, certainly. And there was definitely a weak adrenals component, which comes with some of the COPDs, you know. And there was definitely a pH mismanagement issue, which that's why citrus fruit always aggravated. I'd eat an orange and have an allergy attack, too alkaline. And so generally like this, the asthmas and the deep hay fevers and some of the chronic obstructive pulmonary disorders, you really want to be careful with citrus because you can go too alkaline and then cause a problem because the pH gets, the nutrients get locked out. It's pH lockout, like in the soil pH. And then the cells of the alveoli can't get access to the nutrients. And there's sort of a tetany or a spasm. That's what an asthma attack is, right? And it can be freaking out. It'd be hard to, if you're having a hard time breathing, that's why people go to the inhaler, but it's the worst thing you can do because every time you do that with the inhaler, you're shutting down the body's ability to go through the asthma attack naturally. I mean, right, Carl? Every time you jump to that inhaler, I've studied this a bit, and it's like, I've had a bunch of asthma patients, and the first thing I do with an asthma patient is, let's get your adrenals strong again, because they're usually doing raglands and it's falling, almost always. It's like, well, you got no kidneys grasping the lung chi. I mean, Joanna would appreciate that. That's what that is, that your kidneys are supposed to grasp the kite of the lung chi and pull it down into the body. And if you're weak adrenals, your body doesn't do that, and so you're not getting as much out of the chi in the air as you could. So for the asthmatic hay fever person, so they say. So I even had a woman, like, thank you, I can't name her, but she came to me with no hope of children. Her asthma was so bad, toxic inhalers all day, really wanted to have kids, 35. I'm like, yeah, no problem, you got kids. I just knew. So 2 years later, she had her first kid because we got off the toxic inhaler and worked on her adrenals. She got it down to 1 emergency inhaler at night only. She was never able to quit that, but what a huge win. She was off like 95% of it. And then really interesting story about birthing. She was a blue-eyed type, a loose weave, which means she had weak connective tissue. I said, please don't have your second child too soon, because you need to recover. So they waited, I think, 3 years. And even then I still was like, ah, man. And so they waited until day 27 of her cycle to finally, you know, have sex, and she got pregnant. And she says, I swear to God, Craig, it was like the egg was waiting for him. I mean, you wait till day 27, you think you're in the clear by then, for God's sakes. You know, and the little girl is just a magical little fairy. I could see why she definitely chose them. It was just the perfect family for her. It's so adorable. And that's one of my prized cases of my life, is because this woman has a family and the doctors were never going to give her hope. Prednisone the rest of your life. You know. And now there's 2 of these kids walking the planet because of a simple just act of love and courage that we're going to do it this way instead. That's my MO. No, we're not going to do it the idiot's way. Idiopathic. That's my favorite diagnostic. When I see that word in medicine, that it's like, oh, we're dealing with idiots. It means I don't know. It's not a scary diagnosis. When you see the word idiopathic in any diagnosis, it basically that means I don't know what follows. Think idiot. So no, we're not doing it the way the idiots, the drug pushers are doing it. We're going to do it this way. And that's following natural law. People want to have kids. You know, I tell people, if you got a light in your eyes, you can cure anything. If you got Shen, you got spirit, you can cure anything. Your mind's your own problem. Your psyche is your own problem. You limit yourself, and then you've already closed the door. Oh, Craig, I could never do that. Well, you already limit yourself by just saying that. Why not try? Like, oh, I could never serve Scotch Creek 20 foot. why not try? You might die, but at least you tried. Or, some of the things, crazy things we do. Maybe I should try getting sideways going 55 miles an hour on the gravel next to Davenport. Oh, I broke my neck. I won't do that next time. It's called Walking the Edge and Soul Theater of Earth, So we'll end the spring thing with a little bit more next week too. Karsten's going to host. So those of you know Karsten here locally, that'll be sweet to be at his house. And more of the spring and natural law conversation, and in the live groups too. And you can always email, you can reply on YouTube, you can email me if you want a topic. And if you want to speak too, there's I'm up here a lot, so it's nice to have guest speakers and men like Carl and other people talking too. So enjoy your evening, and pretty good for me, 9:15 ending.